When you think of Albania, you might picture a small nation on the Adriatic, maybe a place overshadowed by its bigger, more famous neighbors. But its history? Wow, it's not just a list of dates. It's this powerful, centuries-long epic of just surviving against absolutely impossible odds. So how on earth did they pull it off? And that's really the big question here, isn't it? This is the central puzzle of Albanian history. We're not just talking about a story of conquest, but one of incredible, stubborn resilience. How does a culture hold on to what makes it unique when it's been squeezed for centuries between giants like the Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires?
Its location was both a blessing and a total curse. It was the gateway between East and West, a strategic prize that basically every major power in the region wanted a piece of. And yet through all of that turmoil, something uniquely Albanian always managed to endure. So, to really get our heads around this incredible story, we're going to walk through 6 key chapters. We'll start with the roots of its identity, then dive into the long age of empires, the legendary resistance, the centuries under Ottoman rule, the great national awakening, and finally, the chaotic birth of the modern country we know today.
All right, so first up, what was the secret sauce? What was that core thing that allowed Albanians to just weather every storm history threw at it?
Well, believe it or not, the answer is the language. The Albanian language is a true survivor. And this is what's so wild. It's not Slavic, it's not Greek, and it's not Latin. It's its own completely separate branch of the Indo-European family tree. It's like a linguistic island. For centuries, rulers tried to stamp it out, but it lived on in homes and in remote mountain valleys. It was the bedrock.
And to really appreciate why that linguistic survival is so amazing, you have to understand the immense and constant pressure they were under, starting thousands of years ago.
So let's rewind. Long before the Romans showed up, this land was home to the Illyrians. And they weren't one big, unified kingdom. Think more of a patchwork of fierce, independent tribes, known for being great sailors and warriors, who, let's just say, did not like being told what to do.
And then, the parade of empires begins. Just look at this timeline. It is staggering. First, the Romans. Then it becomes part of the Byzantine Empire. Then you have Slavic migrations changing everything. Norman invasions from Italy. Absorption into the Serbian Empire. And finally, the arrival of the Ottomans. It was just a relentless, non-stop series of conquests.
Okay, fast forward to the 15th century. The Ottoman Empire is an absolute juggernaut, just sweeping through the Balkans. All the little fractured Albanian principalities, well, they look like they're next on the menu.
It felt like the same old story was about to repeat itself. Another empire, another conquest. But this time was different. And it was different because of one man.
This is where the story gets really cinematic. The hero's name is Skanderbeg. And the craziest part? He was one of them. The Ottomans took him as a hostage when he was a boy, raised him, and trained him to be one of their most elite commanders. Then, in 1443, he just defected. He went home, took back his family's fortress, and raised the banner of revolt. For the next 25 years, he did the impossible. He united the warring Albanian clans, and using brilliant guerrilla tactics, he held off 2 of the most powerful sultans in Ottoman history. The guy became a legend. But of course, Skanderbeg couldn't live forever. After he died in 1468, the unity he had forged just crumbled. The resistance fell apart, and within a decade, Albania was completely swallowed by the Ottoman Empire.
And we're not talking about a brief chapter here. This was for the long haul, more than 4 centuries of Ottoman rule. It was a period that would completely reshape Albanian society in ways you can still see today.
But this wasn't a simple story of oppression. It was way more complex. Over time, many Albanians converted to Islam, creating this unique religious diversity where Muslims, Catholics, and Orthodox Christians live side by side. Albanians even became major players within the empire, serving as top generals and administrators. Yet, at the same time, way up in the rugged northern mountains where Ottoman control was weak, life was still governed by an ancient tribal law code, the Kanun, and that's where the old identity and language really hunkered down and survived.
So let's jump to the 19th century. The Ottoman Empire is now famously the sick man of Europe, and new nations are breaking away all over the place. For Albanians, the question was huge. How do you turn a preserved culture into a modern nation?
The answer was the Rilinja, or the National Awakening, and it was a pretty systematic process. First, intellectuals focused on the language. They created a standard alphabet so everyone could read and write in their own tongue. Second, they revived the story of Skanderbeg, turning him into a national hero that could unite both Christians and Muslims. And then, this cultural movement turned political, with groups forming to demand their rights and, eventually, to fight to keep their lands from being carved up by their neighbors. This title, from a really important book at the time, just perfectly captures the whole spirit. Albania, what it was, what it is, and what it will become. It was a conscious effort to look at the past, define who they were in the present, and, for the first time in centuries, actually imagine a future as one single, independent nation.
So now we're in the early 20th century. The final collapse of the Ottomans in the Balkans is coming, and it's bringing both a massive opportunity and a mortal danger for the Albanians.
The Balkan Wars were the final nail in the coffin for the Ottoman Empire in Europe. But for Albanians, this wasn't cause for celebration. It was a moment of pure panic. Why? Because the armies of Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro were on the march, and their plan was to divide up all the Albanian lands among themselves.
So independence wasn't some grand plan. It was a desperate, last-minute gamble. As foreign armies were closing in, the nationalist leader Ismail Kamali raced to the city of Lor, raised Skanderbeg's old flag, and declared Albania independent. It was a race against time to create a state on paper before the land itself was swallowed whole.
But the dream quickly slammed into geopolitical reality. The great powers of Europe met in London to draw the new map. And while they did recognize an independent Albania, the compromise was just brutal. They drew borders that left nearly half of all Albanians outside of the country, most painfully in Kosovo, a cultural heartland which was given to Serbia. That decision would spark conflict for the next 100 years.
And independence definitely did not bring peace. The new state was a total mess. No stable government, no real army, no economy. It immediately fell into chaos, and then World War I broke out and it got occupied by about 5 different armies. The country basically ceased to exist almost as soon as it was created.
The years after the war were just as turbulent. They managed to put a government back together in 1920, but the country just lurched from one crisis to another. All this chaos was finally ended by one guy, Ahmet Zogu. He first seized power as president, but then, in 1928, he just went for it, declared Albania a monarchy, and crowned himself King Zog I. He did bring stability and tried to modernize, but he paid for it by becoming dangerously dependent on Mussolini's Italy.
And this brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Albania's entire history is a masterclass in survival, in preserving an identity by always being against something. But after you finally won that fight, the challenge shifts completely. How does a nation that was forged in the fire of resistance learn not just to survive, but to actually build? That question would define its entire 20th century, and it's a question that continues to shape its future today.